Hey, everybody, and thanks for joining me once again on Straight Jacket White Rabbit. My name's Adam, and I'll be your host. Chat, throw up a 1 in the room if you think that there is something, some kind of creature residing in Loch Ness. In and around Loch Ness, I'll say. Throw up a 1 if you think there's something there. Throw up a 0 if you think there's nothing there at all. Today we're going to be talking, obviously, about the Loch Ness Monster. But there's quite a few angles, you guys, that I wanted to bring up on this. I actually pulled up notes for once. I've got notes all over the place because a lot of this I want to make sure I remember. So I want to start off in the relatively modern era. There have been sightings throughout history at the loch of a monster. That's all we can really call it. We don't know what it is. Now, there's been theories of what it is, and some of them are more insane than others. But here's the thing. People always say, well, the interest picked back up on this creature in the 30s. That's true in 1933. But it really wasn't gone for that long, you guys. There were huge stories being written about this thing in the late 1800s, between 1885 and I want to say 1897. There were several instances. So it wasn't that it made it popularized. It was just these stories happened to get picked up more readily, I'll say, nationally and internationally because of the times we've been progressing. So anyways, the events that took place in 1933 were the Adelaide Mackey sighting and the Spicers sighting. Adelaide Mackey was a hotel owner near the loch, and he claims that an enormous rolling animal, I want to get this right, an enormous animal rolling and plunging on the surface of the loch. Honestly, that's a pretty poignant description of what most people say they see. A serpentine type movement, just odd snake-like movements in the water with large wakes and splashing, and occasionally a body or a hump or a head will be photographed, usually from a distance. You guys, everyone complains about the distance of these photos, but I don't think you understand how big Loch Ness is, okay? It's a fairly big place. So the sightings are not always conveniently right up close to wherever these people with their cameras are. But what I want to get into more specifically is there have been sightings throughout history, you guys, even up to current day. There were 2 in the last 40 days. One in October and one at the end of September. And there were more than that. There have been, I think, 5 or 6 reports of sightings of the Loch Ness Monster this year, guys, just this year. Now, I'm aware that there are hoaxes and there are pranksters, and, you know, I'm not going to say I know what's for sure a prank or a hoax, because I don't believe some people who took credit for things that were supposedly hoaxes, some of their stories didn't exactly check out with me, so I'm not going to say whether or not I believe some of the instances were hoax or not. I always assume there's some hoaxes mixed into things like these because that's what people do. They do it with everything. They do it with ghost hauntings and alien UFO sightings and all kinds of stuff. But this is a historical creature in this lake, in and around this lake. And mainstream science seems to laugh it off an awful lot, but then spend exorbitant amounts of money sending research team after divers, after sonar sweeps to this lake. Well, why are you still looking for something in this day and age if you're telling us for the last 200 years that there's nothing there. Maybe it's because there is something there and they know it and they just don't know what it is, just like the UFO instances. Now, for those of you who don't know about the first recorded instances, not just folklore, the earliest recorded instance of a sighting of the monster is believed to be by the person who wrote the life story, I'll say, of Saint Columba. Now, this is where this gets a little story time. Okay, Saint Columba MacNeil was born an Irish nobleman. He came up from a royal lineage. He was trained in sword fighting and things at an early age. He had all of the advantages of being a nobleman's kid. Now, he loved training with swords, and he loved the idea of battling, sword fighting in general. Then he became, according to most people and most stories of St. Columba, he became an excellent swordsman. However, by the time he was in his late teens or early 20s, we're not exactly sure, he decided that he was going to become a monk. And while he was a monk, years down the road, he got into a little bit of trouble, and basically what he did is he was convicted of making an illegal copy of something called the Battler, which is the oldest surviving Irish illuminated manuscript. He was accused of this by the person who apparently had lent him this book, this manuscript. And it's said that apparently overnight he made a copy of it. Now, whether or not he made the copy that he got from St. Finian's book or not, the dispute got in front of the king. And the king who argued the ruling on behalf of the other man, St. Finian, basically decided that he was going to rule in favor of Finian. And Columba didn't agree with this. He didn't think he did anything wrong. And tensions built to the point where it actually started a huge battle. I mean, it was huge, you guys. There were over, I want to say it was something like 3,200 men, something like that were killed. They lost their lives fighting this battle for one side or the other, but Columba won the battle. Now, although he won the battle, it was at a really huge expense to his own troops, and Columba felt personally responsible for their deaths and the deaths that he had inflicted on the other side as well. And he was stricken, by all accounts of people who knew him at the time, with kind of just this morose guilt. Well, long story short, it was about a year later that he decided he knew how he was going to make amends. He decided then and there that he was going to convert as many people that he could to his Lord's religion, Christianity. So he set about on his way and went to the island of Iona, that's in Scotland. He began the hard task of trying to convert the Picts. Now, the Picts were pagan druids, and after going to the mainland with the Picts that he met on Iona to speak to their leader of the Picts about his mission to spread Christianity and ask for permission, he ends up at some point in this journey along the River Ness. The River Ness is the river that's about 6 miles long. It connects Loch Ness with the ocean. Now, when he gets to the River Ness, they're traveling down the riverbank, and they run into a large group of Picts. Now, Picts they're like pagan druids. They believe in earth gods and, all manner of monsters and other things. So he really badly wanted to convert these people. He felt that it was his job, but they were very hard pressed believers in their religion. Now, when he gets closer to this large group of Picts by the riverbank, he notices they're all gathered around in a kind of a half circle. And as he gets closer, he can see what they're gathered around is a mangled body, still soaking wet from being pulled from the river. And they were preparing to bury it right there on the bank of the river. Seeing this, Columba obviously asks, what had happened. And they told him that this man was in the river with his friend, and a beast came out of the water, made this extraordinarily loud roar, grabbed this man, pulled him under the water, and were shaking him around viciously. And then the water grew kind of silent and still, no more disturbances, and the body came up and drifted up to the edge of the river, where they grabbed the body and dragged it out of the river. Hearing this, Columba and his men were kind of disturbed and a little bit freaked out at the idea of this, but Columba kept it cool. I say he was freaked out, but that's just, I think, me projecting. By all accounts, he kept his cool, but what he did next was a little messed up. So he took himself to the edge of the water of the river Ness, and he goes over to one of the servants he had with him named Ludley Mockuman. He told Ludley Mockuman to fetch a boat that he pointed out on the opposite shore of the Ness River. Now, when he told this poor kid to go do this, he said it with a stern voice. And this kid, you have to remember, this man has just defeated an entire army of people in this huge battle a year before. He's on a religious mission. This kid really believes in the mission, so he didn't argue in the slightest. Mockuman gets in the water, starts to swim across the river. Now, when he starts to swim across the river, they say that a beast rose. They use the word monster. But a giant beast rose out of the lake. Actually, I think they used the word beast. I'm sorry. But a giant beast rose out of the lake and began to rush. I keep saying the wrong thing. It wasn't the lake. It was the river Ness. Sorry about that. Rewind. But anyways, giant monster, beast, whatever you want to call it, comes out of the river Ness and starts charging down the river at this poor kid, Ludley Mockuman. It gets yards from this kid, maybe feet, mouth open, ready to strike. And Saint Columba, well, he wasn't a saint then, but Columba, I can't talk right now. Columba Mackinell walks up to the river. With his right hand out, he goes and makes the sign of the cross. And then he shouts, almost overshouting the noise that was coming from this enormous beast, which they said was almost deafening. And what he shouts to this creature, I swear you couldn't make this up in a Hollywood movie, except for they did, Lord of the Rings. This guy shouts, "Go no further. Do not touch the man. Go back at once with great speed." At which point, the beast becomes still. It stops in the water for a moment, just looking forward. And then it turns and goes back under the water towards Loch Ness. Now, when they turned back to the Picts that were on the shoreline, they were all kneeling. Every one of them, within a day or so, converted. And it was all due to this miracle that Columba had performed, according to them. They saw him vanquish a being of great power that they revered. And it was enough to make them realize that, hey, I want to be on this guy's side. So this is the original text. Now, the story was written by a man. Let me get his name because I know I'm going to mess this up. Right here. Otto, what was his name? Adamnon? I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. Adamnon? Now, he is supposedly a direct descendant of Columba. And according to all accounts, he had written a few biographies for people. And he was known to be very thorough. He interviews witnesses and family members as much as he could get his hands on. And this is supposedly the way that he wrote the encounter that was of his ancestor, Columba. Now, we don't know for sure if this story is true, but if it is, this could literally be not only a sign of why we can't always find the Loch Ness Monster, but it could be proof that this thing has been here for a long time, over 1,400 years. Now, I'm not saying it's the exact same creature. It could be the kin of the creature that did this. They could just be descendants of the creature that did this. I don't know what their lifespan is, so I can't say that. But it makes for an interesting story to think that this man came upon a great beast with large teeth coming up out of the river. It's enough to make you think. Now, unfortunately, there is no graphic detail of what exactly the creature looked like, except for they give accounts of like an estimated size, which was big enough to attack and drown a man with ease. But here's where I go with this, you guys. If this thing was the same species as whatever Nessie is, the Loch Ness Monster, maybe this fact that it was only at the halfway point, about 3 miles up the Ness River, could this thing just be making a home or feeding grounds out of the Ness? Maybe Loch Ness isn't where it stays. Maybe it goes up the Ness River and out to sea. So I started looking into some things and culture references, folklore, things of this, going from Scotland to Ireland, the Norwegians, Vikings, all around that entire area, you guys. And there is some trippy accounts. There are 7 different stories from 7 different cultures. Well, no, I might say 7 different cultures. It's like 5 different cultures. But there are 7 different stories of a creature that, I kid you not, is exactly what people have described seeing in the loch. It's got a huge, long, serpentine neck, 10, 12 feet long neck, a large head full of sharp teeth, an enormous body for its skinny neck that's so long, and no legs, just flat pieces of skin. I'm going to call them flippers. So why are all of these creatures in this one area? I mean, I'm not saying all of the creatures, but 7 of them are almost identical to what we describe as the Loch Ness Monster. Some of them go back a long time, even further back than the Loch Ness story. So is it possible that maybe the Loch Ness Monster was just a sea monster, a sea creature who made its home in the loch. Maybe it's a breeding place for the loch, you guys. Maybe the Loch Ness Lake is its breeding grounds. And the reason I say breeding grounds is because of the second story. Here, hold on one second. The Spicers land sighting, 1933. In July of the same year as the Addie McKay's sighting. The Addie McKay sighting, the hotel owner. The Spicer sighting was George Spicer and his wife claimed to have seen a creature with a long, wavy neck and large body cross the road in front of their car and disappear into the loch. Now, what my little quick Google note right here doesn't say is that the body of this creature they saw was purportedly only about 4 to 5 feet tall. It was the neck that scared them. This thing had a 12-foot long neck and a serpent-like head. But if its body was only 4 feet tall, this doesn't sound like the Loch Ness Monster that everyone's talked about and made, witness statements to. The body on the Loch Ness Monster is purportedly quite large. Was this an infant that the Spicers saw in 1933 crossing the road to go back into the loch? Now, some people were like, you're seeing things, you're crazy, when they came out and made this witness statement. But here's the thing. There were sheep found killed on the side of the road where this beast came from. Fresh kills. If they were imagining it, what killed the sheep? Was there just happened to be another predator that same night that they saw this? Did they see the predators and just make up a different story that would be more entertaining? We don't know. But the Loch Ness Monster at this point has reached iconic status simply because of the fact that we don't know. We don't know what this creature is. We don't know why we keep seeing it. And these are people from all walks of life. These are doctors. These are psychiatrists. These are hotel owners. These are every type of person you can imagine are having these encounters or seeing something move in Loch Ness. Now, if eyewitness statements weren't enough for you, there is literally thousands of people who have been hitting Loch Ness for the last 30 years with sonar. And they've gotten some really interesting hits. Objects under the water that are moving, not stationary, that are 40 feet, 30 feet, 25 feet. The size varies. It also depends on the technology and the time when the report was made, because sonar has not always been super accurate. It's gotten better over time. Now, there have been recent sonar hits that are disturbingly eerie. These things are huge. Whatever is making these sonar hits is huge. It's moving. And mainstream science keeps saying the same stupid answers. Well, maybe it's a log caught in some kind of a underwater current, and it's just, first of all, most logs, they're not 30 feet. Even if it was a tree that was 30 feet, usually not going to just be free floating, not on top of the water, not at the bottom of the water, but just hanging out in the middle somewhere or deep somewhere, but not on bottom. It's going to sink or it's going to float. It's definitely not been floating there for 100 flipping years or more. It seems that mainstream science has almost some kind of a vendetta against the Loch Ness Monster. They want so bad to tell you that you shouldn't believe this and it's not true and it could be this and it could be that. Recently, they blamed it on eels. Flipping eels. Okay, I want to break down some stats because I do have this pulled up and I don't want to waste it real quick. I want to tell you something, okay? The largest known European eel, the largest one ever, was just over 6 feet. Just over. Only about that big around. A Loch Ness eel would have to be on the range of like 15 to 20 feet minimum. And even if you're just talking about, well, people always describe this 10 to 12 foot long neck. Fine. Let's say 12-foot long eel. Number one, I just told you the longest eel ever recorded, ever, is just over 6 feet in that area in Europe. So not only would this have to be an absolute monster of an eel, but it doesn't account for so many things. It doesn't account for the large body humps coming out of the water. It doesn't account for the killing of animals found near the loch on a regular basis. There are animals found dead around the loch quite frequently, bloody dead, like ripped open. Mostly not. It's not like a daily occurrence. Mostly, I believe these things feed on food available in the loch. But it doesn't explain so much if these are eels, you guys. It certainly wasn't an eel that attacked that man. You know, an eel that's charging at someone that'll just stop and stare at you in the water, mouth open, ready to attack. And for these people to be scared and telling them that this thing dragged an entire full-grown adult under the water and basically mangled his body. So that doesn't fit for the theory where Columbo fought the monster on the banks of the River Ness. It just there's too many things that the eel explanation just doesn't cover. There's got to be something physical in Loch Ness that is big. Now we know there's no sharks in Loch Ness. There's never been a reported sighting of a shark in the Ness River or in Loch Ness. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, a lot of parts of the river are shallower and maybe they were deeper back then. I don't know. Or maybe it can just go. I don't know exactly how shallow that river is. I tried to look up the information for you. Parts of it go as deep as like 34 to 52 feet. I know that. So this river at parts is pretty deep. But I can't tell you that it was that deep the whole way. I don't know how big of a monster could possibly fit in this river. But is it completely out of the realm? Do we know for sure it's out of the realm that it could just be swimming up and down the Ness River out to sea when it wants to go to wherever it's going to go? Like I said, maybe they're using this as a breeding point, some kind of a mating place. Maybe it's a food place. Maybe they're going there and eating the things that live in this lake, like the eels and the fish. They even tried blaming Loch Ness Monster on a sturgeon, a species that doesn't live there and never has. Their thing was, well, it lives in the ocean and it could have gone in there. Well, yeah, it could have, but there's never, ever, ever, ever been a report of one in there. Not ever. I looked. So, what do you guys think it is? Is it a monster? Is it a mythical creature? Is it just a cryptid that we don't understand? Dinosaur. People have said that. Now, do I think it's a dinosaur? I don't know. But from the description of it absolutely could be prehistoric. And keep in mind, people who talk about, oh, well, that was like 100 years ago and blah, blah, blah. You guys, we know for a fact there are animals on this earth right now that are over 100 and something years, okay? It's not impossible for animals to live that long. They do it all the time. There are tortoises alive right now that were alive when there were still pirates roaming the seas. It's a fact. So is this creature just have an extraordinarily long lifespan? And maybe it doesn't have to breed all that much. Now, scientists will give you stupid things like, well, you need a population to breed. Really? Because there are animals that breed without even having a mate. Okay? And that's not me quoting Jurassic Park, although they bring up that point. There are animals who, when faced with the reality that there's no mates near them, can spontaneously produce offspring. It's happened. It's a fact. How do we know the Loch Ness Monster isn't like this? But no, mainstream science will say you need a population, and we would notice them if there was a population of these things. Well, not if it's just one birthing another one, who births another one a few, dozen years, 100 years, whatever their mating cycle is. But science seems to almost always do this when they reach things that are concerning that they don't understand or strange that they don't understand. Instead of trying to figure it out, they say, well, it can't be this. Well, until you know what it is, how could you possibly eliminate something without doing the research? And they haven't. They've looked into Loch Ness, but they haven't found enough of anything to make any kind of a logical conclusion. So, by and large, I believe the scientific community is doing a disservice to itself by stating things like Bigfoot's not real, Loch Ness Monster's not real. You don't know that. And there's a lot of evidence that points that something's there, just like Bigfoot. A lot of sightings, a lot of evidence, something's out there. Something big, hairy, and sometimes kind of mean. At the loch, something with a huge neck, a large head, and a fairly good-sized body has been spotted thousands of times over the history of Loch Ness. But they'll just tell you to turn a blind eye. Maybe they'll try to tell you it's a weather balloon next. You guys let me know what you think in the comments. As usual, you guys, I appreciate all of my members. I appreciate all of my subscribers. You guys are freaking amazing. You guys have been helping me get my channel going, and it's growing so fast. Honestly, I didn't even know there were this many people who were interested in this type of a subject. So it's super fun for me to come on here and talk to you guys. If I do look a little tired tonight, I do apologize. I know I was stumbling at a few parts. I'm doing this at 1 o'clock in the morning just because I need to get I need to have a quieter place to do it. I have the grandkids here and things. So, but hopefully it wasn't too bad. I love each and every one of you guys. Shout out, like I said, to all my members. You guys are amazing. If you haven't already and you like what you saw, hit the subscribe button. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithms and things. Leave a comment, give me a thumbs up if you like the video. So interesting topic, man. The Loch Ness Monster. You gotta love it. What do you guys think it is? I'm really interested to see what the comments are going to be whenever this video gets posted. For tonight, I'm going to call it a wrap. This has been Straight Jacket White Rabbit signing off, saying be good to each other and look for the truth.